Welcome to the City Manager's Report. The City Manager's Report, a look at city updates and municipal news, and a preview of the next Oshkosh Common Council meeting agenda. Your hosts, Emily Springstroh of Oshkosh Media and City Manager Mark Rohloff.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us on your City Manager's Report, your source for all of the latest and greatest local news and updates, as well as a preview of the upcoming Common Council meeting agenda and topics coming up regarding that. I'm your host, Emily Springstroh, joined as always by our City Manager, Mark Rohloff. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, Emily.
It's great to have you. As always, we've got a lot to talk about today, so we're going to go ahead and dive into the hot topics in the first half of the show, take a little break, and then we'll return with a review of the Common Council meeting agenda for Tuesday, November 28th, 2017. So, Mark, very top of our list, we've got a big announcement, and I'm going to go ahead and let you take it and make the big announcement here today.
Well, yeah, it just happened literally as we were preparing for our show, so we kind of messed up the show. But Oshkosh Corporation has officially notified me that Oshkosh has been selected as the location for its new global headquarters. So very excited with that news, very, very pleased and proud that we were able to put together a very competitive proposal that there were communities nationwide we were competing with. And while we hoped that we had a home field advantage, you never knew until the very end. But their board of directors approved it the other day, and we were just notified. So we're happy to start moving forward and make sure we keep Oshkosh Corporation with us for another 100 years.
Definitely, and a lot of hard work, and it's been a process. So why don't you tell us what's next? So Oshkosh Corporation has made the announcement they're staying in Oshkosh. What are the next steps that we're going to be seeing in this process?
Well, now we work on the devil that's in the details. The details were generally approved by council with the proposal that was approved by them just earlier on, I believe it was November 7th. Now the idea is to work on the actual sale document for selling a portion of Lakeshore Golf Course, as well as what the development agreement will consist of, which will include the different incentives and things like that. We're looking at a TIF district, a tax increment financing district, for some of the incentives, and those will go through the process of getting that approved, and then rezoning of the property because it's currently zoned for residential because it's in a residential area, and golf courses can exist in residential areas, but golf courses can exist and parks can exist in so many other zones. But one of the things we discussed with Oshkosh Corporation was having very high standards for both them and the surrounding uses. So we're going to be looking at rezoning that entire area. We're actually looking at creating a brand new zone that doesn't exist right now called some loosely termed business park, so that it's there and it's very well understood that very high standards are going to be out there to match up with what Oshkosh Corp is envisioning and what we're envisioning for the greater area as well.
So we'll hear more about the new zone and this whole process with the development and the rezoning thing in future meetings of different committees and boards, commissions.
Yes, one of the first things we'll need to do is start working on the details of the sale agreement. I would anticipate that the next meeting of the council on December 12th will probably include a closed session so we can go over some of those details to make sure that we're getting all our areas protected. But the area that you see in yellow surrounding in the graphic here is roughly the area. It's plus or minus 35 acres. We'll have a survey done that'll formalize the exact amount. It's $100,000 per acre that we're selling it to Oshkosh Corporation for. So whatever it turns out to be, it'll be that times $100,000 per acre. Okay. But you can get a rough idea of what their footprint is going to look like. But then that's going to get more details as time goes on. They have to go through all the approval processes that everybody else has to go through when they're getting a building approved. And a major thing like this will involve what's called a plan development as well. That'll be built into the code. But the whole idea is that we want to make sure that whatever they do is reflected in the greater area, and also that they're going to maintain the high standards that they've talked to us about already. So it's really to mutually protect one another.
Definitely. And you talked about the footprint of where they're going to be locating their new headquarters. Now, that's only a portion of the property there. So another big question is what's going to happen to the remaining balance of that lakeshore land there?
Assuming 35 acres, we're probably looking at about 70 acres, roughly. That's the balance of the land. Some of that will go into roads, of course, but the balance is really up to the council with the advice of the Parks Advisory Board as well as the Plan Commission. There were a lot of concepts that were kicked around. I think for the most part there was some consensus that additional commercial wasn't necessary. There are privately owned properties along Oshkosh Avenue that can be commercial, but it seemed like the balance of the property was for public use. So what that is really going to be up to the council and the advisory boards and commissions. I see that happening over the course of the winter, where we'll get input on that. Some people have other ideas on green space, a smaller golf course. All those ideas are on the table for the public to provide comment to the council and ultimately figure out what is going to complement Oshkosh Corporation after they begin their process. We're going to have to be working on a parallel process to decide what we want to do with the balance of the property.
Definitely. We've had such great public input up until this point, and you could say that we're really going to be depending on that in the future as well as we continue to develop this plan.
Yeah, the public input was very conceptual up to this point. Now we're going to be getting, we're going to have to roll up our sleeves and really start talking about those things. And I know there are different people that have different visions, and all those preferences and ideas are really going to have to play out. We'll certainly be seeking public input, but it's going to be more specific now about what types of improvements. Riverwalk is obviously out there as well. That's been on the concept plan, and I think that's something that we all want. But again, we need to get good public input about how this all ties in together. We've got the Heritage Trail crossing Little Lake Butamore. We've got trail system we want to connect with all the areas around the city, as well as just what other recreational open space type of uses that we want to look at that site. And we're going to have some really good discussions about that in the coming months.
A lot of opportunity. Any final thoughts with this announcement, Mark, before we move on to the next topic here?
Well, certainly anytime you have an issue that causes a bit of controversy, I think it's appropriate that we start to work on the healing process and make sure that everybody gets input. But we're so pleased that we're going to have a company it already has a 100-year history with the city, that they're going to continue to be able to be the headquarters, the global headquarters for Oshkosh Corporation. And even though their production sites are throughout the world, Oshkosh Corporation is going to have an emphasis on Oshkosh with their name for the next 100 years, and we're just so excited about that.
Definitely. Well, very exciting news. Thank you for the update and the briefing on that, and definitely we'll be looking out for more information and getting started on that plan in the coming weeks here. So next item we want to talk about, another update, maybe not quite as big as the Oshkosh Corporation one, but it's a very exciting thing that we've all been watching all summer long, and that's the water tower over on Marion Road. They're painting it.
It may not be big, but it's tall, it's making progress. Just today, Scott Williams of our Oshkosh Media staff got a live paint cam going on that. The logo is just getting finished up on the one side, so you can see the new logo that's going to be there on the horizon for many a year. We're real excited about that, and so it's getting close, and we learned a little something today, weather-wise.
We've learned a lot about the process of the painting and the building of the water tower. Today when we were asking what the next steps are and what's going on inside the water tower, we were told that they are heating the inside to make sure that they can paint the outside. So kind of go into detail with that, Mark. I know it's kind of an interesting thing.
Well, in order for the paint to adhere best, it has to be maintained at least 55-degree temperature. So the heat inside is intended to get the metal there heated up enough that you can start applying the paint. So that's why the heat's going on inside.
Definitely not 55 degrees outside.
It is definitely. So there's a lot of heat going on in there to keep the metal going at 55. But then, of course, then we have to actually paint the inside because there's a protective seal that you have on the inside. But, of course, they'll be doing that after they get the inside painted, or the outside painted. So the inside will be painted, then they go through a process where they flush the system to make sure that everything's clean and ready to go. But James Robbie, our Public Works Director, has informed me that they believe they'll be ready to have water serving the citizens of Oshkosh around the first of the year. So we're real excited about that.
And the old one, the shadow of the new one now, coming down spring-ish?
Yeah, we'll get it through the winter, and then we'll knock it down come springtime. A little better weather for that type of thing.
So more exciting video to come, right?
Oh yeah, a lot more.
Coming up next here, we've got leaf pickup. We really want to get that information out there that the leaf pickup was extended to December 1st. But it seemed that the leaves were just not wanting to fall this year, and so we extended it an extra couple weeks.
I was tempted to go out and shake the trees in my yard because, yeah, it really was. And we heard that from a lot of people. And because the weather is working in our favor, our leaf trucks also do our snow plowing. So we if two things are happening at once, we can only do one, and snow takes priority. But the weather looks pretty good for the next week or so. So we're going to be out there on the same schedule. Of course, with Thanksgiving, the schedule is a little different. But just get your leaves out, and we'll get them taken care of for you.
Definitely. And for more information, the full media release is on our city website, and it talks about the brush pickup week and the yard waste collection site. So if you aren't able to get your leaves out in time, then there's other options for sure for you. So go ahead and check that out at ci.oshkosh.wi.us. So Mark, now it's that time of the show where our viewers have the chance to ask their city manager anything they want about things that are happening right here in Oshkosh. It's the Question Mark segment. So let's go ahead and see what the question is this week. All right, Mark, question is, when will Georgia Street by South Park reopen?
I know that a lot of people have been very anxious to get that going, and I'm happy to report that this is going to be reopened for Thanksgiving, so everybody can get to their relatives' homes and whatnot without much trouble. So Georgia Street will be reopened. It was already open a little bit on Tuesday when I took a drive down in that area, and then we've also been informed that they'll get the parking lot opened so that people that want to go to the portion of South Park that is available to be open, you'll be able to access South Park as well. But Georgia Street is open, and we're happy to let everybody know that, and just in the nick of time for winter. And then, of course, we're going to be continuing work into next year, getting the ponds done and everything, so that it's going to be a wonderful park and a stormwater retention facility that we desperately need in that area as well. So a great combination, great cooperation between our public works and parks departments. So we're real happy that finally people are going to be able to access Georgia.
Yes, it's very exciting to see all the work that's going on out there. And of course, I have to encourage people to visit our YouTube channel or our website, oshkoshmedia.org. We've got a few videos that kind of explain what's going on out there if you're curious about all of the aspects of the progress like you were talking about there, Mark. So great question this week. That one came from Facebook. Thank you so much for sending it to us. If you have a question for City Manager Mark Rohloff and you'd like us to answer it on the next episode of City Manager's Report, go ahead and send it to us on Twitter at City of Oshkosh, Facebook at Oshkosh Media, or go ahead and email it to us, and we will make sure that we get it on the next episode. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive into the Common Council meeting agenda for Tuesday, November 28th. We'll be right back on CMR.
Experience Deck the Halls at the Oshkosh Public Museum. See the historic Sawyer home decorated in its holiday splendor. The life-size Christmas Village exhibit showcases a festive display of recreated scenes from favorite holiday movies. And at the center of it all is an elaborate, handmade wooden toy circus. Now through December 31st, kids admission is free, and adults only $3.50. Deck the Halls, a holiday experience at the Oshkosh Public Museum. Discover more at oshkoshmuseum.org.
It is sad but true that for years, some people have been using storm drains to dispose of their wastes. Storm sewers do not treat or clean up anything passing through them. Everything that enters a storm drainage system is eventually discharged in exactly the same form as it entered. These wastes can kill plants and destroy breeding areas. Never pour or dump anything down any storm drain.
Welcome back to City Manager's Report. Thanks again for joining us. We're in the second half of the show now. That means we're going to go ahead and take a look at the Common Council meeting agenda for Tuesday, November 28th, and go through some of the highlights that we want to look out for on that meeting day. So, Mark, first item that we want to look at is the public hearing, and that is about the amendment to the comprehensive land use map, changing land use designation from residential to commercial, and that's at 610 Oshkosh Avenue to 1746 Oshkosh Ave. So maybe you can kind of walk us through what exactly this means and what the land use is going to be used for, I guess.
Well, this is in the immediate area around where Oshkosh Corporation is now proposing they will be locating their new headquarters. And so we were ahead of this even before that issue came up because we knew that eventually this corridor was going to be commercial. And so what this does is says officially from our comprehensive land use standpoint that we need to transition this area from residential to commercial for the long term. So these properties, everything pretty much on the north side of Oshkosh Avenue. These are privately owned properties. They're not part of the golf course, not part of Mary Jewel Park. These are the residential lots that you see there already. So the idea is just to let everybody know that that's the plan for the future. Now that Oshkosh Corp has made their announcement, I know that there are parties that are interested in either purchasing or have already purchased these properties. Maybe a little speculation on their part, but they wanted to get moving on it. Now it may take on a little more urgency, but I still think it's appropriate that we get this part done, then we take a step back and take a look at what other standards. I mentioned the business park zoning that we're looking at doing. This would be included in that eventually. The idea is we want to make sure that we properly plan that area because this is going to become a wonderful gateway to the city, and I think it warrants a higher standard, and I think people can understand that we're going to have a great anchor, a catalyst development with Oshkosh Corporation, and I think we can raise the bar there and not worry about people won't want to go there. This is going to be a very attractive area. People will want to locate there from a commercial standpoint. So I think we can kick the standards up a notch and get something very special out of this. And the people working on these properties from a commercial standpoint, they'll certainly make money as well, but it'll be done in the right way, and I think something that is worthy of a gateway that we're envisioning for this area.
Definitely. So we'll hear more about those standards that you're talking about in this public hearing then on this day.
We'll be more talking about, this is more about the general residential to commercial.
Okay.
I don't think we'll be getting a ton of that, but that's the long-term view of this thing. And I think it's important to get that out there so people understand that this is just one step in a larger process.
Right, which a lot of times people don't realize all the steps that are in these process. So it's good to see that written down and laid out for us too. So thanks for that explanation, Mark. Under consent agenda, we have quite a few items 4 through 8, and then also 24 and 25, and these are all dealing with Casey's Meadow South neighborhood. Tell us a little bit about what all of these items are for and kind of the history of this.
We haven't had a lot of residential subdivisions since the housing bust of 2008. So these don't come up very often, but I think it's important that we talk about these. This is a subdivision that is being added to. This is actually the third edition. So you can see this area. It's just north and west of Carl Traeger School, east of Clareville, north of 20th Avenue. It's where Mockingbird Lane currently dead ends. Casey's Meadow South is the subdivision there. The idea is that the developer, in order to sell lots there for residential purposes, has to put in all the public improvements, water, sewer, storm sewer, streets, all those things have to be done, sidewalks, all that has to be done by the developer in order to sell lots. So there's so many different items on the agenda because we want to make sure that they are locked up to guarantee that they get these things done. So we approve the plat, which is kind of the legal portion of it, but then we have to get them to agree that they're going to put all those improvements in, and there are guarantees that we have a financial guarantee that if they don't, we can either do it and charge them or charge the properties later on, but we want to make sure that we have it all covered. And so all those things will get done through this process. And I think it's just It's just something that we haven't been doing very often, but I think it's important for the public to know that they're not going to be footing the bill for this. The developer will, and as the developer sells lots, the developer will recoup his or her money.
And it's always good to see things like that, like you said, protecting the taxpayer, that doesn't fall onto their shoulders. And it's quite a few items, so I won't read through them, but it's a little bit of a process here, and it's good to hear the background on that. Continuing on under the consent agenda here, we've got the approval of engineering service agreement with Speedy Clean Drain and Sewer for sanitary and storm sewer main and lateral televising. Now we see this every year, I believe, and this is part of the reevaluation of the CIP. Take us through what exactly this is, Mark.
Anytime we do a street project, we're digging things up, and we certainly want to make sure that if we're not going to be doing anything specifically with sanitary sewer or storm sewer, that we still have a good idea. If we're going to dig it up and there are problems, we want to know those. The advantage of sanitary sewer and storm sewer is they're relatively large, and so you can televise those before we even get in there. So we're going to spend the next couple months doing this type of video that we have from the past, and it's identifying if this is a leak or if this is from flow that's coming in where it's supposed to be coming from. It's supposed to come from the pipes, not from leaking at the top. So you get an idea of where the water is coming from. Then we can mark those, and then when we do dig up the street, we can fix these broken areas that are a cause of back flooding in sanitary sewers back into people's homes. If we stop this, it's called inflow and infiltration. If we can prevent that, what's called I&I for short, if you can prevent that, then you're going to prevent potential backups and flooding in the future. So this is part of our process. We follow it, and we go into the laterals and take a look and see if maybe the resident needs to fix their lateral as well. But it's all part of a process to make sure that we don't have to dig up that street twice, which just kills me if we have to do that.
Definitely, and it's a really fascinating process. This is one of my favorite videos, is being able to see how this works. And so it's a great thing to learn about, and something that happens quite often that we don't even realize is going on. So it's kind of fun to learn about. Under new ordinances, Mark, we've got designation of some new bike lanes on both sides of Wisconsin Street from the Riverwalk sidewalk connections to the north end of the bridge to Irving Avenue. And it seems like we see a lot of bike lane items on agendas lately, and it's kind of an exciting thing. It's part of the bike plan. Now
that we have a bike and pedestrian plan, the whole idea is we got to start piecing these together. And Wisconsin Street was built with this in mind. So just north of the bridge where the sidewalks connect to the Riverwalk there, we have an area where we can have bike lanes, and there's enough width to accommodate that all the way up to Irving Avenue. And obviously, because it's near the university, this is important, but it's also a great residential area, and people want to get to the Riverwalk, and sometimes people want to cross the bridge. When you get to the north side of the bridge heading south, you'll dismount your bike and cross the bridge. We don't want people crossing the bridge on the street. We want them to walk across on the sidewalks. But this is all part of implementing our bike plan, and obviously anytime you're near the river, you want to make sure you have a good access so people can cross the river. So we're excited to keep moving forward with this. The Bike and Ped Committee does some great work. We've got a PSA that talks about all the great work they do, and look for those and learn more about what we're doing to expand our bike and trail system throughout the city.
Yeah, so further connecting the Riverwalk, and like you said, there's a lot of great information out there on the city website too. I believe there's a map that has all of where the bike lanes are and everything, so definitely check that out. It's really great to see that information. Exciting to see more bike lanes going in. Continuing on under new resolutions, we've got the receiving and filing of a petition for direct legislation to reduce the forfeiture for possession of marijuana to $25. Now, is this something we've seen come past before or come before council?
Yes, this came before earlier this year, but the petition did not meet the requirements from just number standpoint. It's about numbers. Are there a sufficient amount of numbers to warrant consideration for putting on direct legislation? And then the second part of it is it something that is appropriate for direct legislation? It looks like they may have sufficient numbers, but this petition still is proposing to repeal and or amend an existing ordinance, and that is not subject to direct legislation. So while I appreciate the efforts that people put in to do these petitions, they can't change an existing law that council's adopted. So that is something that I think the city attorney is going to be able to explain in better detail, but you can't amend or repeal existing legislation, so it can't go that way right now.
Anything else that council can do, other options, in the future for something like this?
Well, they can certainly take into consideration the fact that there's a lot of people that commented on this. They could amend it themselves without going direct legislation, or they could simply put an advisory referendum on the ballot. Those are options that the council can consider, but then they get into the policy issue. Is that something they want to do? And that'll be up to the council to decide on, but we know for sure it can't go to direct legislation, and so that's where the city attorney is going to recommend.
Excellent. Moving on, very next items here, 4 items: adoption of the 2018 city budget, approval of the 2017 tax levy, adoption of the 2017 tax rates, and then finally approval of the 2018 CIP capital improvement program. So Mark, it seems like it's a never-ending process, and then we get to this meeting here. So why don't you take us through where we're at with the budget and tax levy and all that great information?
Well, since July, the council has had a total of 6 workshops on the 2018 budget. The council's learned a lot about different issues facing the city, the finances, and some of the needs in terms of what our community is looking at for the future. At the last council workshop, the council directed staff to take a look at perhaps increasing the number of employees in police and fire, and also on the recruitment side, because recruitment is such a big issue, particularly trying to attract a more diverse workforce. So those items are on the council's agenda for consideration over and above what the base budget was considered at, and so the council will be taking up those issues. We had the public hearing at the last council meeting. We didn't get any public input on that at the meeting itself, but council has been getting input from residents that talk to them, call them, email them. So they've gotten that input, but now it's time to make that final decision on it. The idea is that the tax rate is probably going to increase anywhere from 3.9% to 4.3% on the city side of the tax bill, but that doesn't include all the other tax jurisdictions. But the council will be making some final decisions on Tuesday, and it'll be interesting to see how it all falls into place.
And they vote now so that the tax bills can go out beginning of December.
Right. It's really the important part right now is getting the tax rate set, because the tax bills need to go out early December, and you'll be getting your tax bill shortly. Sorry, everybody, but that's just the process that we need to follow.
Yes, and then once more, of course, look on the city website for all the budget workshop meeting replays, all the information, and the budget itself is all located right on our city website. Under council member announcements and statements, the mayor wants to make mention of the fire department toy and food drive. So we got to get a little plug in for this. It's a really great event every year coming up on December 4th.
Our fire department, they off duty, they come and go through different neighborhoods around the stations and collect food and toys. And that is going to start the week of December 4th. A lot of details with it. So just go to the OshkoshFD.com website and take a look at the routes and when they're going to be in your neighborhood. But we're really excited to talk about that. Again, starts the week of December 4th through the week of December 11th. And it's a great cause, and the fire department is so committed to doing this. And it's a great community effort, and we really appreciate all they do to help people less fortunate in our community.
Yes, so looking forward to it. More information to come on Facebook. And then finally, really briefly, Mark, traffic impact analysis on Oshkosh Avenue under your statements.
This is, again, considering everything going on with Oshkosh Corporation now. Before we do anything, we really need to take a look at traffic impacts, not just with Oshkosh Corporation, but all those other areas we talked about. And so I've directed staff to solicit proposals, and now that Oshkosh Corporation's made this announcement, bring it forward and begin the process to take a look at Oshkosh Avenue, where the traffic is going to be in the future, and how we can make the street sized right and put all the appropriate traffic improvements in there as we look forward. So be on the lookout for that within the next couple months.
Wonderful. Well, we are out of time, Mark, so I'd like to thank you once more for joining us on City Manager's Report for a very exciting episode and lots of great information. So thanks, Mark.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Again, the Common Council meeting is this Tuesday, November 28th at 6 p.m. You can watch it live on GovTV and on our website at oshkoshmedia.org. You can also listen to it on 101.9 Oshkosh FM. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter for all of your community and government programming and updates, or check out our YouTube channel for government meeting replays and past episodes of your favorite programs. And of course, as always, if you have a question for City Manager Mark Rohloff, send it to us on Twitter at City of Oshkosh, post it to our Facebook page, or email it to us, and he'll answer it on the next episode of CMR. As always, thank you so much for joining us on City Manager's Report, and we'll see you next time.